So we are here. We are here to reading. Okay. I think today is the fourth video. Have you learned anything from this experience, or is the consequences simply that you will double down on your behaviors from before? Do you feel compelled to change anything to make it so that your anecdote isn't triggered even worse next time and behavior doesn't keep growing in the proportion? An easy question to ask in the following: does the consequences make you feel good or bad? So now consider the overall outcome of this event that we have analyzed with the ABC loop. We can see that we are emotionally triggered by some combination of our parents and the topic of the future that will be there, each particular emotional need or pain that comes out in this sitting. And again, next we see that our behaviors are somewhat unhealthy response to his emotional need and pain aren't necessarily about the topic or sitting by themselves. Finally, we observe that we have defended our emotional in need and pain so hard that we cause turmoil in that relationship. And though this is a small victory for emotional shield, it only makes the anecdote and behavior more likely to be amplified in the future. How can you change this sequence or event to make sure it doesn't happen again in the future? It always starts it always starts with questioning yourself and asking why you feel such emotional pain. This is what leads to the behavior and then to consequences, where the cycle repeats all over again. You can either cut off the conversation before the emotional pain reaches a boiling point, or you can make sure that the behavior is something that suits you and help you cope. For instance, if you all want to be supported in your decisions, have a conversation that this deals with this and leave it when it doesn't. If there is something you don't want to discuss, tell your parents tell your parents that there are things you would prefer to be off limits, and you might discuss when you are ready. Leave it if they keep pushing you. The ABC loop helps you understand how to cut the cycle of lack of emotional control, and it explains why things tend to get worse over time, not better. It gives you the exact blueprint for better emotional resilience and calm. Avoid the alter situation that can turn into an anecdote and attempt to choose healthier behavior when you triggered. In the realm of anxiety and overthinking, the ABC model gives you something to hold on to when you may feel adrift in old patterns and unconscious mental habits. If you can recognize an anxiety trigger, for example, being evaluated by someone in a position of power, and know that it can elicit a certain behavior from your panic avoidance, a spiral negative self talk. then you can take steps to avoid the usual consequences. A panic attack or help saboting at work. The ABC loop gives the opportunity to step outside of the loop rather than get tangled in it. You can switch from unconsciously reacting to deliberately responding. In other words, once you are aware of what is happening, you suddenly have something special a choice. Emotional dashboarding. We have seen that our brain has a natural, inbuilt, and inherited tendency to focus on the negative and the anxiety and overthinking come from our desire to control what is not strictly under our control. But when we can become conscious of these patterns, we have the chance to respond with deliberation and agency rather than react blindly. Emotional disbanding is similar process to the ABC loop and is another way to helping you cultivate more conscious awareness and control over your anxiety. It also encourages stepping back from a situation to review your actions and reaction to break out your autopilot, while the introspect approach of emotional dashboarding is the same as the ABC loop. There are a couple of more incremental steps: situation, facts, thoughts, emotionals, body, sensations, impulses, actions. Example: project due to tomorrow. Project due tomorrow. I don't feel like doing this. I shouldn't have to do. Sadness, burden, irritation, heaviness, fatigue. Go to sleep, eat, space out. Situation. Jot down the literal facts of the situation. Details that could not be argued by any observer. This means leaving out opinions and adjusting prejudice or bias. This will help you to understand circumstances around your anxiety, overthinking, and emotional outburst. A project is due tomorrow. Your spouse's family is arriving for the holidays. You are assigned a new supervisor. You have moved to a new place after a breakup and are invited to a party. Be very careful to be honest and natural here. No interpretation, judgment, or cleaning. Just the fact. In a way, you are seeing the layout of the situation without your emotional engagement in it. Set the stage, so to speak. Thoughts recall the personal interpretation and thoughts that went through your mind when the first feeling of distress or avoidance came up. These are the beliefs These are the beliefs and thoughts that are triggered by the external event. Often, these are the more volatile and violent than following examples because they lead directly to a next step of emotions and emotional needs and pain. Really try to articulate your inner monologue
as it can literally tell you everything you need to know about the mental and emotional state. I don't feel like this. I don't feel like doing this. I should not have to. Have to. Last year, they seemed judgmental about the appearance of your house. I have heard bad things about the person from people who have worked under him. Huh? गाई ले दी मुझे. I'm not sure I'm ready to imagine with strangers in an unfamiliar place. Really dig into this if you can. Put words to the sensations and beliefs. It might not seem like it, but every action and preceded by a belief or thought that it itself triggered by a circumstances. Slow your inner dialogue. Slow your inner dialogue when down to see what stories and beliefs are running through it. Emotions take a measure of the feelings you experienced during this conflict using only single emotional words. For your purpose, be sure at what think about the emotional need or pain that is being invoked. Make the connection from the external actions to your thoughts and your emotions. See them as a continual a cycle that we are trying to understand and ultimately cut in favor of something healthier or happier. Sadness, boredom, irritation, resentment, disfavor, annoyance, anxiety, fear, concerns, dejection, tensions, uneasiness. When naming your reactions, ask yourself three times why these emotions came up. The repetition of the question will encourage you to go as deep as possible and get the root of the problem. In the first example, what mental picture caused the sadness about the late project? Fear that it wouldn't be good enough. Is the boardroom because you feel isn't a routine that keeps recurring? Are you irritated because there was a social event you would rather have done tonight? Bodily sensation, mark down the physical sensation you felt when experiencing the conflict. This can add clarity to your emotions because while we can lie to ourselves, our bodies can only react and will almost always tell the truth. Heaviness, fatigue, stomach upset, headache, shoulder tensions, increased heartbeat, or lightness in head, slight tremor in hands. Be as literal as possible by describing bodily sensation. Avoid metaphors like my heart was jumping out of my chest. Instead, say I felt my heartbeat accelerating. Sometimes our bodies will know something far sooner than your brains can register. Anxiety in particular is not just a mental phenomenon but a complete bodily experience. Your anxious thought and feelings are the final and most obvious manifestation of the anxiety. But what does the anxiety look like? Your gut, in your chest, or in your skin? Impulse actions. Write down your first instinct of what you wanted. to do to relieve or avoid the conflict? What things made you feel good? Distracted you, minimized your attention to the uh, preceding sensation. If these are relatively vegan or healthy, that's a good thing. However, uh, if your first impulses are either retreat or get lost, overanalyzes, then you know a chord has been struck. Something something is happening within you, and it is being demonstrated through your actions. You are likely in the midst of an unconscious repeating loop. Go to sleep, eat, space out, watch TV, surf online, do busy work, make phone calls, scream a little bit, drink alcohol, walk outside. Like a ABC loop, the practice of emotional dashboarding produces a sequence of events that can be broken down and assessed like a fictional story. Why did this happen? How can we prevent it? And what elements seem to be your downfall? This the dashboard add a few internal elements, internal conflicts, and physical sensations that play the same role of the motivation services in fiction. Recognizing those altercations in your feelings and thoughts can help you identify them they came up again. This all may seem rather complicated, especially when anxiety seems lighting fast and irresistible in the moment. But just remember that you are not the mercy of your anxiety. Unless you agree to be, you can always stop and break down your experiences and work through them consciously and on your own terms. Break it down: situation, thoughts, emotions, body, senses, and impulses and actions. At first, it may work to literally write all this down in a notebook, but in time you can do the more automatically and these more easily. How all the above bend into one another. This is ABC model or dashboarding approach. Better in truth, they are variations of the same exercise. One method may seem more appropriate than the other depending on your circumstances. You may want to be ABC loop when initially coming across a conflict. Then the dashboard if it happens again to get worse. If you notice a new pattern of anxiety emerging around your behaviors with your work supervisors, for example, you may choose to run an ABC loop first. If you keep having the same problems, for example, you keep avoiding procrastinating or self sabotaging because of anxiety, you might want to run through the dashboard to see if you can gather additional insight about your deeper thoughts and feelings behind the behavior. It may simply be easier or more efficient just to execute an ABC loop. Or perhaps your anxiety is so acute that you'd rather run the emotional dashboard with honest self-inquiry. Either method can help you to make headway in discovering patterns and identifying troubling behaviors to change. But with both, pros- progress start with awareness. Anytime we can wake up and take conscious control, we make stride, strides and combating anxious overthinking. Worry postponement. One amazing and amazingly simple technique for putting the brakes on the anxiety spiral is called worry postponement. In fact, you don't even need to suffer from anxiety to benefit from using it. It is a great all-around stress management technique, a little like making a stress budget. Anxious and worried thoughts are kind of streaky. They have an intrusive quality. Once a threatening or negative thought pops into your head, it seems hard to shift or ignore. You can quickly get distracted since your brain thinks, oh, here's what I really should be paying attention to. And just like that, your attention and focus is pulled away from the present moment. So, what's really happening is that worries are controlling you rather than you controlling them. A stressful thought comes along and cracks the whiff, and you're instantly away. The mistake we make is to think that if a negative thought comes along, there there is no other option but on the focus on it. Remember, our brain's negativity bias and our information processing software that literally evolved to amplify bad news. It tell us that the threatening and scary thing always takes precedence. Now if the worry is, I wonder whether the trigger in front of me is going to try to eat me. Then obviously prioritize then. But usually the worry is something like, I wonder if Jenny thinks my presentation sucks, or what if identified thieves have gone through my stress and discovered that genre I threw out of my accident, and now everyone at the FBI knows my travel secrets. In other words, we give these thoughts priority when we really shouldn't. Worry postponement isn't saying you are going to completely eradicate worries. Yes, we all have them, even non-anxious peoples. It's just saying you're going to put worries in their proper place rather than jumping to attention every time some anxiety idea pops into your head. You make it wait. You are in change of where your conscious awareness goes. You don't allow just anything to distract or disrupt your focus. Worry postponent. Worry postponent is exactly what it sounds like, a deliberate choice to put up worrying for another time. This is different from saying you won't worry. This is more about taking control and managing your worry, proactively deciding how much of an impact you want to have on your life. In the moment, a worry can seem or urgent and all important. It can seem non-negotiable that you can turn every fiber of your being toward those thoughts and feelings. But actually, you have a choice. Worry postponement can be done a few different ways, but it's all about setting deliberate and conscious limit to worry. like drawing a little fence around it. One method is to limit the time provided when you worry. For example, you get into bed at night and prepare to sleep, but your brain instantly switches into worry mode and brings up 1,000 things it wants to stew over. You tell yourself, that's fine, I am allowed to worry about that, and I will, but I won't do it now. I will schedule to a specific time to worry about this later. Let's say tomorrow at 10 a.m. Before the period, I won't spend a single second thinking about any of this. And then you do that, and then you do that. If your mind wanders over these or ultra important life or death thoughts, you can confidently tell yourself that it's fine. You'll think about it, just not now. Chances are the worries are not all the time sensitive and can wait. In fact, you will be fresher in the morning and can bring your full brain to task. If you even still want to, tell yourself have already done everything you need to do. The worrying is ticked off ticked off the list, and there is nothing outstanding for you to do right now. Just sleep. An alternative is to put limits on the duration of worry. So you get up in your bed and tell yourself, right, you want to worry. Okay, let's worry. भाई क्या बोल रहा है यार? But we are only doing this for 5 minutes, and then we are going to sleep. Set a timer, worry your heart out, and then stop. You may notice a few things with either of these techniques. The first is that if you delay the worry, you often don't want to it later anyway. The second is that even when you do permit yourself some worry time, you will often notice that your anxiety level are exactly the same before the worry and after. Meaning, the worry time did precisely zero to help. In either case, you are limiting and managing the effect that worry has to do, and teasing yourself that you have a choice and are not the mercy of the distracting instructive thought. To practice this technique needs preparation and practice. To practice this technique needs preparation and practice. Set a time every day when you are forcefully worried. Pick a time when you won't be disturbed and when you are likely to be your best friend of your mind. Experiment a little and don't be afraid to try a few different things from your field set. Right. I hear what you are thinking. अच्छा लिखा हुआ है। Wait a second. I hear you. I heard what you were thinking, though maybe you are wondering. Sure, sound good. But what if this time I really do need to worry about something? What if this time it's serious? Well, let's play devil's advocate. Wow. And imagine that occasionally our worries and fears are ruminations ruminations actually are every important and need to be considered immediately. What we need is a method of disturbing and distinguishing between those situations and simply overthinking. We can take
ଏମିତି ସେଦିନ କାଟିନି ହିଆ ଭାଲିଲେ
ହାତୀ ଦେଖିନି ମୁଁ ହାତୀଟା ଅଛି।
ଏମିତି ଅଛି ଦେଖୁ ତ କାଟି ଠକେ
ଦେଖା ଦେଖା
ନା ଏମିତିରେ କାଟିନି
ମଷ୍ଟର୍ଡ ଅଏଲ सरसों तेल
ଏଇ ଛାପୁଛ ନେଇ ତଲରା
काल खणे काट काल काटलू
ନାଇଁ ହେଲା ଗଲା
I really need to worry about something. What if this time it's serious? Well, let's play devil's advocate and imagine that occasionally our worries and fears are ruminations actually are very important and need to be considered immediately. What we need is a method of distinguishing between those situations and simple overthinking. We can ask ourselves the questions: is this worry one genuine problem? Two, I can do something about right now. Be honest, the problem has to be both objectively critical but also actionable. This is actionable in that every moment, let's say there is a pressing work matter that's eating up that it's eating up inside. It is needed real problem, but let's say it is late at night and one person you need to speak to unavailable until morning. So the problem is genuine, but you cannot do anything about it now. Let's say your child has a fever, but this otherwise fine, but you could possibly rush them to the emergency room to be cooked at. This is a problem that can be acted on, but it isn't the genuine a problem. Finally, imagine you are worried a recent uh, recent client is going to leave you a bad review. In reality, this is not really a serious problem. No business ever failed on the back of a single bad review, and there nothing you can do about the right now. But what if it a serious problem and you can act right now? Then act. But act, don't worry. Worry and overthinking are useless, particularly when appropriate action is what's called for. Here you need to worry even less, since living a calm, clear, clear, clear mind is what will help you see a solution most quickly. Unless your anxious thought is genuinely serious and you can do something sensible in the moment, then postpone make the call in the morning, sort it out later, or just drop it for the time being. Once you have decided that something is not worth worrying about, be ruthless. Imagine your mind is a dog. Imagine your mind is a dog, not dog on a leash, or keep pulling it back the present. This is easiest to do, and this is easiest to do if you engage all five of your senses to ensure you in the real present moment. Examine your environment. See that you can list three things, three sights, three sounds, three smells, and so on. When worry times comes, notice the urgency seems diminished somehow. Remind yourself that what once seemed urgent doesn't stay that way. Look with fresh eyes on concerns and anxieties. Go into a problem solving mode and see if committing to taking useful actions reduces your anxiety. Sometimes the best thing you can do for a worry is to pull it into the real world, make it a practical problem, then act on it. Using the five ways, sometimes overthinking takes a vague, nebulous from jumping from one thing to next. Other times you are anxious because something you can definitely point it. For example, a difficult decisions you have to make or a problem you have to solve. Sakachi Toyota techniques of the five ways to useful framework to guide your thinking into something useful and away from stressful ruminations. Start by defining the problem. What is the issue? Exactly what is the issue? Let's say your dog is barking and acting threateningly to the neighbors, aggravating them, and leading to them threatening a call to the authorities. They tell you is no uncertain terms you need to do something. If you are ruled by anxiety, you may start to go down a spiral. What are you going to do? They are going to complain, and the species take your dog away. Do the ha- do they hate you? Is everyone is a never both similarly angry? But slow down and work your way through the question. Ask yourself, why is this happening? Why is your dog barking and harassing the neighbors? My dog is still young and energetic breed. During these days, the gets bored, and I think she barks because she is restless. She restless. She doesn't mean any harm. Now ask the question again. Why is that? Why is that? Well, I guess she is bored because she hasn't had her work yet. I only work her in the evenings. Why is that? That's the most convenient times. I cannot do it in the mornings. What is that? Because of my new shift pattern, I need to get to work really early. Why is that? Because we have retrenched half our team and I'm picking up all the slack. And the or according to the method is the root is your root cause. It seems like a stretch to link your grocery neighbors with the recent changes at work, but there you go. Now you have a choice. You can take a steps to look for better work that doesn't eat up all your time, or arrange for a different shift patterns that way you can walk your dog, and then she won't bark as much, and you could pay a dog walker. Granted, this is a very simplistic example. You will come up with the different answers for bigger and more complex problems. Occasionally, more than five questions may be needed, or fewer. You might use a technique to quickly decide what you do about the minor annoyance. You are double booked now, or major life decisions or dilemmas. You are completely restructuring your business after a massive downscaling. If if your worry is aimless and formless, this technique may not be appropriate. But if if your worries is spreading out of your control, especially because you are facing a big problem and decisions, take a deep breath and allow this method to cut through the culture for you. Keep asking why, identify the root because, and then you are empowered to act to change that root cause. What you will notice about the technique is that you need to start out with the correct framing of the problem. If you can want to ask others for their input to identify any personal blind spot that may be influencing you. For bigger issue, don't trust your answers. Really pretend you know nothing, and look at things with a fresh perspective. Don't answer what you think. You should answer if you want to arrive at the truly insightful result. You need to give a meaningful answers along the way. Here's an example of a bigger issue problem. I can't seem to sell my house, and it's stressing me to out. What's wrong with the people? What is happening? What is that happening? People are looking at the online listings, but nobody is booking viewpoints. Why would people look without booking a viewing? Maybe the house is nice, but the price is too high. Why would the price be too high? Because I paid a lot for this house myself, and I am terrified of losing some of that quaint equity. I have I have priced it so I make a small profit. Why do you need to make a profit? I guess because I thought to sell it for more than I bought for it. I'm honest, I think paid too much. Why did you pay so much for this house? It was my first house and I was anxious. I would miss out. Now look at the problem again. Without delving deeply, the problem seems like what's wrong with the people? But on closer inspection, the real impediment to a house sale is funny enough psychological resistance rooted in anxiety. By following the questions through, you can see yourself that regret about paying too much in the past and resilience to losing any more money is preventing you from selling now. Instead of ruminating over it endlessly, why don't people want to buy my house? You can simply take action. What will address the root cause? You might work toward accepting that you made a poor financial decision and come with terms with the fact that you might lose some money. This means you can finally lower the price and probably sell the house. Be careful though. The five ways are only useful if your worries have some genuine basis in reality. That is, there is a real crisis they center around. You want to cut down your confusion, not increase it. If you notice these five questions spur your endless rumination and research, then stop. You will know the method isn't working for you. If you arrive at the final answer and still feel anxious and unsettled, your best bet in that case is to stop, distract yourself, and engage in a very postponement until the anxiety subsidies. Summary: tackling anxiety comes down to the learned skill of emotional regulation rather than deny or quiet down our natural emotions. We learn to manage them consciously and deliberately. We do this by becoming responsive rather than reactive. Becoming responsive is about pushing before we act a situation, practicing impulse control, looking at down motivational beliefs and thoughts, and finding healthy solution to problems to go beyond anxious overthinking. One way to be more responsive to be dissect situation at the ABC in the ABC framework. anecdotes, behaviors, and consequences. We need to examine what precedes that and what follows anxious behavior, and then work around it. Building self-awareness of your habitual patterns takes time and seldom comes in the heat of the moment, but the engineering our triggers and outcomes, we can take control our anxious behavior and change it. Emotional dashboarding is similar approaching designed to introduce more conscious awareness and reduce reactivity. We carefully analyze the factual situation, our emerging thoughts and beliefs in that situation, our resulting emotions, our physical sensations, and the impulses or actions, that all of this inspires and extends overthinking. When we are aware of all the uh, precipitating factors, we can step in and avoid falling into anxiety spiral. Worry postponement is a very direct and effective way of interrupting anxiety spirals. When you recognize yourself beginning to feel anxious, deliberately schedules a discrete time in the future to worrying instant and then continually bring your minds to present. We can seldom eliminate worry from our lives, but we can consciously limiting its time to one set onset and the duration time. Finally, the five ways is a method that can help you to put definite and useful step to vague worries and overanalysis. If you are dealing with a real problem or crisis, the five ways can help. Define the problem, and then ask what caused it. Repeating the why question 5 times to arrive at the real root cause, which you can then act on. Avoid this method if your anxieties are not attached to any real dilemma or decisions. The questions are designed to elevate overthinking into clarity and problem solving, not more overthinking. Debugging the machine. Your brain is not inescapable prison designed to torture you. While you have no control over how you think or feel, it is a tool, a machine that you can use as you see fit. One of the biggest reasons that anxiety takes a hold on us actually a little ironic in believing that anxiety itself is something to avoid or feel bad about. We trap ourselves in various spirals. We have talked about emotional regulations, but beneath this skill is a fundamental mindset shift. That is the idea that negative emotions are not the end of the world, they are not unbearable, and that we are more than capable of weathering them. In this chapter, we will be looking more closely at the characteristics and mindset of the people who are not naturally anxious, their worldviews, attitudes, and perspectives on the life, given them an Im- immunity to distress. Importantly, they don't experience any less stress than you or I do, but they interpret it differently and give a different meaning. Once you are practicing becoming less reactive and mastering your own emotion using something like ABC framework, you will naturally start to experience a shift of perspective. You will start to see distress, discomfort, uncertainty as a normal part of being alive. And you will also start to take your skillful management and acceptance of these feelings as a given. Distress tolerance. Distress is a natural part of life. Every person at some point of another needs to face discomfort and anxiety. It's not a question of whether you will have to endure it, but when. Fortunately, emotional resilience is something that you can learn and cultivate with a plan and frequently practice. We can learn we can all learn to lower the stress in our lives and remove triggers. Yes, but we can also do a lot of elevate our own resilience and mental toughness, and so we are simply not bothered anymore. While many might choose to focus on avoiding emotional discomfort or arranging a life where they don't have to experience it, a truly resilient person trusts in their own ability to withstand distress and not just survive but thrive. Most importantly, having a higher degree of distress tolerance makes you harder. You won't even have to use copying your self awareness tools as often because you simply won't reach those heightened negative emotions, and frequently greater tolerance to distress and anxiety can be mastered over time using just a few simple steps. Identify your triggers. It always goes back to the triggers, doesn't it? Whether this is a particular situation, event, person, words, memories, thoughts, body sensations, sounds, or images. A trigger is like a bell that starts us off down the path of the distress. Sometimes a pattern of distress can happen swiftly and without our conscious awareness, leaving us clueless as to why we are suddenly upset. One moment you are feeling fine and going about your day, and the next you feel the escalating sense of panic, anger, or sadness. But what happened? If you look closely, you can always identify the process stimulus that causes your emotions response. It's tempting you think that emotional control and mastery is all about wrestling emotion once they are already in full swing. But with practice you can start to see the some seeds to distress before they sprout into overwhelming emotions that hard to get a grip on. Imagine a woman has some for the Christmas holidays to be with her family. She started the visit feeling calm and balanced and has told herself that she will keep her cool. She will keep her cool even though her family is notorious for heated arguments and upsets during the holidays. Despite feeling okay for a while, the soon notice her and mother's messy kitchens, and feels herself getting agitated at how chaotic the food preparation is, with everyone talking over each other and weighing in on how the best to prepare the Christmas meal. Then she notices she is starting to feel a bit physically warm, given that the first is crackling away the next room and several people in warm jumpers and bustling in and out of the kitchen. Finally, her father makes a heartful comment about the ways he is chopping onions, and like a dam breaking, she suddenly feels extremely angry and upset and snaps at everyone. In other words, she distressed. Rewind the situation, and it's clear that there are several triggers instigating these feelings of anger and unhappiness. These are both external noise and bustle, untidiness, criticism from loved ones, and internal the feelings of chaos and stress, feeling to warm, not feeling good enough, or perhaps recalling negative memories and associateness from childhood. Triggers can be literally anything: anniversaries, money problems, arguing with your family or spouses, workplaces, conflict, going to the doctor, taking an exam, falling ill, having to compete with others, thinking about the future, being rejected. The list goes on and on. The list goes on and on. How do you find out what your own triggers are? A good way to think about this is to took past behavior, and try to understand what's reliable caused distress for you before. This takes degrees for awareness in the moment, but you can notice any patterns in what occurs immediately before you become emotional overwhelmed. The great thing about becoming aware your triggers is that when they occur, they give you an opportunity to stop and take notice of what is happening. This gives you an opinion. This gives you option to set a step in a take action before becoming overwhelmed with a strong emotion. Pay attention to from tomorrow we will start a step to paying attention to warming signs. Okay, so let's read something, but from tomorrow we will start from here. Of course, pay attention to your warning signs. Of course, it's a trigger is just a trigger. A trigger is just a trigger. It's our response to it that it's our response to it that makes all the difference. A warming sign can be through any indication that you are having trouble dealing with some emotional distress. Again, these can be thoughts, emotions, or the urge to behave in a particular way. They indicate the distress is underway and that you are dealing with strong unpleasant emotions. What could happen at this point is that you resort to escape methods to try to avoid this distress. We have already discussed the need to quell uncertainty by overthinking or ruminating in the bid to gain more control. But avoidance and escape can take many different forms. These kinds of behaviors can be varied as triggers that they are designed to avoid. In addition to overthinking, they can include seeking assurance, distracting yourself, resorting to substance and overeating, oversleeping, and simply avoiding the stressful situation completely. In the example, the uh, women above the mounting emotional stress she experienced leads a very clear warning signs, snapping at the people in the kitchen with her, whereas the triggering might have been a small bells. Warning signs are uh, more like what blaring fires alarms. Warning signs are not just actions, however, they can be thoughts. For example, I cannot do this, or I am a failure, or feelings, for example, irritation, panic, or depression, shame, or jealousy, or even physical body sensation, for example, fatigue, shaking, a knot of the stomach, tensions, and tearfulness. It can be difficult to clearly see distress as the unfolds in the moment, precisely because distress in this unpleasant and we are often seeking ways to avoid